In 535 AD, scientific evidence suggests that a massive volcano erupted in the tropics, throwing up so much ash that it turned summer to winter. Crops failed for years while drought and famine gripped the land. Millions died. For the next 18 months, the sun gave forth its light without brightness. Here's what life was really like during humanity's most catastrophic volcanic winter. So yeah, if these stories work for you, subscribe. And I'm curious, what time is it where you are? Comment below. Last week, someone from Canada said they listened during lunch breaks. Not judging, just wasn't expecting that. Okay, tonight it's the year without a summer. But before we go anywhere, get cozy, like actually cozy. Pillows good? Blanket situation handled? Perfect. Trust me on this one. The cold seeps through your woolen blanket as dawn approaches, but it's not the chill that wakes you, it's the roosters. They're crowing, but something's off. It's too early, surely. The roosters are confused, and no wonder. You're lying on a straw pallet in a small timber home in eastern Britannia, 536 AD. It's been decades since the Romans left these shores, and your village is a mixture of native Britons and Saxon settlers. Your father, a Romano-British farmer, married your Saxon mother 15 years ago, bringing together two worlds in one household. Not that anyone cares about old divisions this morning. There are more pressing concerns. As you sit up, the straw pallet crackles beneath you. Your younger siblings are still curled up like dormice, sharing body heat under the single woolen blanket your mother wove last winter. The morning feels wrong. The light filtering through the small window opening is dim, muted. And it's spring, late March. It should be getting lighter earlier, not darker. Father's already outside, your mother says, stoking the small fire in the central hearth. The smoke curls upward, finding its way out through the hole in the thatched roof. Something strange in the sky. You pull on a linen undershirt, then your wool tunic, the fabric rough against your skin. Not like your soft, modern bedclothes. The woolen socks and leather shoes are next. No one walks barefoot in a world full of mud, animal waste, and sharp debris, even indoors. Outside, the air feels thick, peculiar. Your father stands in the middle of your small farm plot, looking upward. Several neighbours have gathered too, all staring at the sky with expressions ranging from confusion to outright fear. It's not burning right, old Wulfric says, gesturing to his torch. Though it's supposedly morning, he's still carrying it. Look how weak the flame is. You glance up. The sun is there, visible through a strange haze, but it's wrong. Diminished, like a dull copper coin rather than the bright gold it should be. My grandmother spoke of a time when the sun dimmed, says Ephra, the oldest woman in the village. Her face is a map of wrinkles, her fingers gnarled from decades of work. Before even my mother was born, it brought a terrible cold. Hunger followed. Nonsense, father says, but his voice lacks conviction. It's just a passing storm. But it isn't a storm. There are no clouds, no promise of rain, just that strange, persistent haze. And as the day wears on, it doesn't lift. By midday, when the sun should be at its highest, the world remains in an eerie half-light. Your shadow on the ground is faint, barely there. Like twilight at noon, your mother whispers, making the sign of the cross. Though she converted to Christianity when she married your father, she still sometimes mutters the old Saxon charms when she thinks no one is listening. Today, she's doing both. Wait, what? No, that's not right. The cross didn't become common in Anglo-Saxon England until later. She's making a different protective gesture, an older one, tracing Tu's symbol for protection against dark forces. The village headman calls for a meeting as the day's strange half-light begins to fade into genuine darkness. Everyone gathers in the mead hall, the largest building in your small settlement. The chickens laid half as many eggs today, reports the Reeve, who keeps track of the village's resources. And have you seen the spring plantings? The shoots are yellowing already. It's that ash in the air, says Dunstan, who was a legionary's son before the Romans left. My father saw something like this near the great mountain in Sicilia, fire and rock from the earth itself. No mountain here, someone counters. Doesn't have to be. The winds carry things, ash, smoke. Dunstan trails off, uncomfortable, as everyone stares at him. "It's a sign," declares Father Cuthbert, the village priest, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Divine judgment, we've strayed from God's path." "Or the gods are fighting," mutters old Hilda, who never gave up the old ways. Thor strikes his hammer against the sky, and the sparks blind the sun. You notice how people subtly shift, Christians moving closer to Father Cuthbert, those still holding to the old ways drifting toward Hilda and her whispered charms. Enough. The headman raises his hands. Signs or gods or whatever it may be, we need to be practical. If the planting is affected, our stores won't last. And there it is, the fear that underlies everything else. Your village, like every other across Britannia and beyond, lives on a knife's edge when it comes to food. Good harvests mean survival. Poor harvests mean hunger, or worse. Your father speaks up. "We should check the stored grain, take inventory. If we need to ration, better to start now than wait." "The grain won't sprout right under this sky," says Elfric, the best farmer among you. His face is grim. "I tried some today in different spots. It's like they know something's wrong." The headman nods. "We take stock tomorrow. Every household count what you have. We'll need to plan." Back home, your family gathers close to the hearth fire. The flames seem to struggle more than usual, as if the strange air is choking them too. "What if the sun just stays like this?" your younger brother asks, his eyes wide with a child's capacity for both fear and wonder. "It won't," your father says firmly, but you catch him exchanging a worried glance with your mother. That night, sleep is hard to find. The roosters, confused by the dim day, crow at odd hours. The dogs in the village whine and bark at nothing, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howl more boldly than they have in years, as if they sense a change coming. Morning brings no relief. The sun rises as a pale, muted presence in the eastern sky. The air feels colder than it should for late March. Your father's breath steams in the chill as he helps you check the grains and beans in the storage pit beneath your home's floor. "We have enough for 2 months, maybe 3 if we're careful," he says quietly, "so your siblings won't hear." After that, he doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. In the days that follow, a new routine emerges. The strange half-light continues. The spring planting struggles. Young shoots emerge from the soil, then yellow and wither. The wild greens that usually provide the first fresh food after winter are stunted, bitter. Your father and the other men extend their hunting trips, venturing deeper into the forests than usual. They return with less game than expected. The animals seem to be hiding, confused by the altered rhythms of day and night. One evening, a week into the strange darkness, a messenger arrives from the larger settlement to the east. He's haggard, his horse foam-flecked from hard riding. "It's everywhere," he tells the gathered villagers, "all across Britannia. Into Gaul too, traders say. The sun is dimmed from Rome to Constantinople." Father Cuthbert raises his voice. "And what do they say it is? This darkness?" The messenger shrugs. "Some say God's wrath. Others blame evil magic. A bishop to the south claims it's the breath of a dragon that lives within the earth." He pauses. "The wise ones say it doesn't matter what causes it. What matters is surviving it." That night, your mother sits by the fire long after everyone else has gone to sleep. You watch through half-closed eyes as she takes inventory of everything in your small home. She counts the dried beans, the stored grain, the salted meat. Her fingers linger on the small clay pot that holds the precious salt itself, worth its weight in silver and essential for preserving food. "Not enough," you hear her whisper. "Not nearly enough." The next day brings the first real council of war. That's how your father describes it, though there's no enemy to fight, just the dimmed sun and what it means for the crops. The headman stands in the centre of the gathering. "We need to think differently," he announces. "The usual plantings are failing. We need to try other crops, different methods." "My grandmother," old Afri begins, and there are a few groans because everyone knows how her stories start. "My grandmother knew which wild plants could feed us when the crops failed, which roots, which barks even." This time, no one interrupts her as she speaks. No one jokes about old women's tales. Everyone listens. Acorns can be ground for flour if you leach the bitterness out first, she says. Certain pine bark, too. Nettles are coming up now. They make good soup. Dandelion roots can be roasted. Young ferns are nearly ready for picking. She names plant after plant, and someone is assigned to take notes using precious charcoal on a scrap of smoothed birch bark. The Romans knew hunger too, adds Dunstan. My grandfather said they made a porridge from whatever they could find, called it hunger soup, better than starving. Plans are made. Hunting parties are organised, not just for game, but to check snares for rabbits and other small animals. Others will gather the wild plants Ephri described. Every household is assigned tasks. That evening, your mother teaches you and your siblings about the plants you'll be gathering the next day. Look, she says, sketching in the dirt floor with a stick. Dandelions, you know, but also look for these. She draws the shapes of leaves, and these are the bad ones. They may look similar, but they'll make you sick, or worse. How do you know all this? Your younger sister asks. Your mother's smile is grim. There was a bad year when I was younger than you. Not like this, but bad enough. My mother taught me. Now I'm teaching you. Outside, the strange half-light is fading into true darkness. Through the small window opening, you can see neighbours moving about with torches, their faces tight with worry. Your father returns from the headman's longer meeting, his expression sombre. They're sending messengers to the old villa to the north, he tells your mother quietly. The one where the rich merchant lives. They say he has grain stores. Will he share? Your mother asks. Your father's laugh is without humour. No, but he might sell, at a price. We have nothing to sell, your mother says. Some do. The headman has that silver arm ring. A few others have things of value. And those who don't? Your father doesn't answer immediately. The headman says we're one village. We'll share what we can get. You pretend to sleep, but you listen as they talk into the night, making plans, calculating how long supplies might last. The adults think they're protecting you by hiding their fears, but you understand more than they realize. As real darkness falls completely, you finally drift towards sleep, wondering what tomorrow will bring under the weakened sun. Outside, a wolf howls closer to the village than you've ever heard before. The dogs answer with nervous barking. Even the animals know something is deeply wrong. Your last thought before sleep takes you is about the sun. Will it ever shine brightly again? Or is this half-light the new normal? And if it is, how long can anyone survive in a world where crops won't grow? In the growing darkness, no one has any answers, only questions and the gnawing fear of hunger to come. When dawn comes, it's hardly worthy of the name. 2 months have passed since the darkness fell. It's now early summer, though you'd never know it. The dim sun struggles to warm the earth, and your breath still forms small clouds in the morning air. You roll off your straw pallet, muscles aching from yesterday's foraging trip. The small pile of wild greens and roots you gathered sits in the corner, waiting to be sorted. Your stomach growls, but breakfast will be meagre, a thin gruel made from the last of the stored grain, stretched with ground acorns that your mother processed to remove their bitterness. Get up, your mother says, nudging your siblings. We need to check the snares before the wolves do. Your father left before first light with 3 other men from the village. They're hunting deer in the deep forest, though game has become scarce and strange in behaviour. Animals seem confused by the eternal twilight, wandering at odd hours, following disrupted patterns that make them harder to track. Outside, the village looks different than it did in spring. Gardens that should be lush with growing vegetables instead hold experimental plots. Following old Ephri's advice, people are trying to grow anything that might survive in the dim light. Root vegetables mostly, turnips and early carrots, plants that put their energy underground rather than in sun-seeking leaves. We're headed to the North Woods, your mother tells you, handing over a small sack made from an old scrap of linen. Take your sister to the stream beds. Look for watercress and young cattails. Remember how I showed you? You nod. Food gathering has become everyone's daily work. Even children as young as 5 have learned to identify edible plants. At the edge of the village, you pass the headman's home where a group of men and women are gathered in serious conversation. 3 more villages sending word, you overhear. Same story everywhere. Nothing's growing right. The big monastery to the south has opened its storehouses, but even they don't have enough to feed everyone who comes begging. The merchant from the villa sent his answer, another voice adds. He'll trade grain, but the price... The voice drops too low to hear the rest. You hurry your sister along. Adults don't like children listening to such grim talk, but everyone knows the situation worsens with each passing day of dimmed sunlight. At the stream, you find other families already harvesting the precious watercress. The plants grow even in the weakened light, their small white flowers dotting the green leaves that float on the water's surface. "Leave some for tomorrow," calls out Edith, a woman from the far end of the village. There's an edge to her voice that wasn't there before the darkness came. "We're just taking our share," you reply, keeping your tone respectful. Tensions have been rising as supplies dwindle. Your sister tugs your sleeve. "Look," she whispers, pointing downstream. A deer, thin-flanked but still a substantial source of meat, drinks nervously from the stream. It's unusually close to the village, and in broad daylight or what passes for daylight now. The permanent dusk has disrupted the normal patterns of wildlife. Slowly you reach for the small hunting knife at your belt. You're not skilled enough to take down a deer alone, but with it this close. The deer's head jerks up. It looks directly at you with dark, liquid eyes, then bounds away into the forest. It knew, your sister says with a child's certainty. It looked right at us. "Animals are hungry too," you tell her, turning back to the watercress. "Come on, help me gather these." You work methodically, moving from the watercress to the cattails growing along the muddy bank. The young shoots can be eaten raw, and the roots rhizomes, your mother called them, can be pounded into flour once cleaned and dried. As you harvest, an older boy from the village approaches, his own collection bag already bulging. "Found a patch of ramsons up the hill," he tells you, referring to wild garlic. "Not many, but enough to flavour tonight's stew." He looks around carefully before adding in a lower voice, "My father and the others are setting bigger snares, for deer, not just rabbits." You understand what he's not saying. The headman has declared that larger game must be brought back to the village for communal sharing. Private snares for deer would be against his orders, but people are growing desperate. "We didn't see anything," you reply, and he nods gratefully. By midday, though it's hard to tell precisely when that is anymore, your bag contains a decent harvest: watercress, cattail shoots, a handful of tiny wild strawberries found in a surprisingly sunny patch, and even some dandelion roots that will be bitter but filling when roasted. As you head back to the village, you pass old Ephri's hut. The ancient woman sits outside, surrounded by younger women and a few attentive men, all listening intently. "Acorn bread will keep you alive, but it binds the bowels something fierce," she's saying. "Mix in some meadowsweet if you can find it, or drink pine needle tea, the young needles, mind you, not the old ones." She catches sight of you and waves you over. "Show me what you've gathered, child." You open your bag and display your morning's work. Good," she nods, her gnarled fingers sorting through the plants. She stops at a particular root. "Not this one. Looks like cattail root, but see this reddish tinge? Drop it. Not worth the bellyache." You discard the suspect root as one of the women asks, "What about mushrooms? There are some growing in the cow pasture." Ephri's face turns stern. "Leave them be unless you're certain. The tricky ones can look like the good ones. My cousin's boy died from mushroom sickness in the Hunger Year when I was a girl. Terrible way to go." Her audience nods solemnly. In these dark days, her knowledge, once dismissed as old women's chatter, has become precious. "What about the forest mushrooms?" someone else asks. "The big orange ones on the oak trees?" "Chicken of the woods, we called them." Ephri nods. "Good eating and safe, but watch for the false ones. If it glows at dusk, well, now any time in this cursed half-light leave it be." You listen for a while longer before continuing home. Ephra's lessons have become as regular as Father Cuthbert's prayers, and many villagers attend, both faithfully hedging their bets between old knowledge and Christian faith. Back at your home, your mother sorts through your gatherings with approval. Good work. The watercress will go in tonight's pottage. We'll dry the rest for later. Later has become an ominous word. Later, when there might be even less food. Later, when the darkness might still grip the world. Your father returns in the afternoon with 2 other hunters. Between them, they carry a single fawn, already skinned and gutted. Not the bounty they'd hoped for, but better than returning empty-handed. Small hunting party from the North Settlement says it's the same everywhere, he tells your mother quietly, as he hands over his portion of meatless than you would have received in normal times. The darkness stretches at least 5 days' journey in all directions. Maybe across the whole world. Your mother crosses herself, a gesture she's making more frequently these days. Did they say anything else? Any word of it lifting? He shakes his head. Nothing. But there's talk of a great meeting, all the villages sending representatives to the old Roman town. The bishop is calling for it. Will you go? Your father looks uncertain. The headman hasn't decided who to send. It's a 3-day journey. Dangerous now, with wolves coming closer to the roads and desperate people in the forests. That evening, the entire village gathers in the central clearing. The communal cooking fire burns lower than usual. Firewood, like everything else, is being carefully rationed. The headman has ordered the building of a large outdoor oven where each family can bring their food to be cooked together, saving precious fuel. The evening meal is a stew made from the day's hunting and gathering. The deer meat has been cut into tiny pieces, more flavouring than substance, swimming in a broth with wild greens, a few precious grain kernels and foraged roots. Everyone receives the same portion, ladled into wooden bowls by the headman's wife herself to ensure fairness. You sit with your family, savouring each mouthful slowly. Around you, conversation is muted but persistent. People cling to normal social interaction, even as the world around them grows increasingly abnormal. My cousin's boy took sick, one woman tells another. Fever and coughing. The wise woman says it's from the bad air. It's the dampness, her friend replies. Without proper sun to dry things out, everything stays wet. Bad for the lungs. Father Cuthbert says it's a test of faith, adds a third woman. Those who remain true to God will be delivered from this tribulation. Near the fire, a group of men are discussing more practical matters. If we split the fishing nets, make smaller ones, more people can try the river at once, suggests Oswald, who learned net making from his father. Fish aren't biting like they should, counters another man. It's like they're hiding too. We need to try the deeper pools. That's where they'll go when they're frightened. After the meal, Father Cuthbert stands to offer prayers. Some bow their heads immediately. Others look away, their faith tested by the continuing darkness. The Lord God created light and separated it from darkness, the priest intones. We must trust that he will bring back the light in his time. From the edge of the gathering, old Afri makes a soft noise that might be disagreement. The ancient ways she follows have different explanations for the darkened sun, different rituals to call back the light. As the priest continues, you notice how the village has subtly divided, those clustered near Father Cuthbert drawing comfort from Christian promises, those hovering closer to Ephra and the handful of other oldsters who keep to the pagan ways, and a growing middle group who simply look exhausted, faith of any kind worn thin by hunger and worry. After prayers, the headman rises. We've had word from 3 more villages, he announces. The darkness covers all of Britannia and beyond, but we also have news that gives hope. The crowd stirs, desperately eager for any positive word. Traders who came to the coast settlement say that far to the south, in the lands around Rome, the sun is gradually strengthening. The darkness is lifting, though slowly. Murmurs spread through the gathering. If true, this is the first real hope since the skies first dimmed. How long? Someone calls out. How long before it reaches us? The headman spreads his hands. That they couldn't say, but if the darkness is receding in the south, it must eventually recede here as well. It's thin comfort, but comfort nonetheless. You see shoulders straighten slightly, expressions lighten just a fraction. Or now? The headman continues. We have matters to discuss. First, the grain stores. He nods to the reeve, who stands with his tally sticks. At current rations, we have enough for 3 more weeks, the reeve reports. 4 if we reduce portions again. Grim looks are exchanged. 3 weeks is not long enough. Second, the headman presses on. The bishop's meeting. We must decide who goes. Debate follows. Some argue that no one can be spared. Others insist they need to know what wider plans are being made. In the end, it's decided that 2 will go. Dunstan, who knows the old Roman roads, and Father Cuthbert, who can speak with the bishop as one churchman to another. They leave tomorrow, the headman concludes. Now about the fishing nets. As the meeting continues, you and your siblings grow drowsy. Your mother eventually leads you back to your home. The night has grown genuinely dark now, the strange twilight replaced by true darkness that feels almost normal by comparison. Inside, your father has built up the small hearth fire using just enough precious wood to take the damp chill from the air. Your mother unrolls the pallets, and soon your younger siblings are asleep, exhaustion overcoming hunger and worry. You lie awake longer, listening to your parents talk in hushed voices. If it's true about the South, your mother says, then there's hope. Maybe. Your father sounds less convinced. But even if the light returns tomorrow, the crops are already damaged. We still face a hungry year. We've survived hungry years before. Not like this. Never like this. There's silence for a moment, then your mother asks, do you think we should go? Join those heading south? Too dangerous, your father replies immediately. The roads aren't safe, and what would we find? Every village facing the same struggles. At least here we have our home, our neighbours. We know the land, what it can provide. More silence follows, and you drift towards sleep, your dreams filled with bright sunshine and fields full of ripening grain. The next morning, if the dull lightening of the perpetual dusk can be called, morning brings a surprising excitement to the village. Father Cuthbert and Dunstan prepare for their journey to the bishop's gathering, packing small bundles of provisions. More interesting to you and the other children is the arrival of a Travelera, rare event in these dangerous times. The man is gaunt but strong-looking, with the weathered face of someone used to the roads. He brings news and, more precious still, seeds. Beans, he tells the gathered villagers, holding up a small leather pouch. From the old monastery garden near the coast. The brothers there say these grow well even in the darkness. They don't need as much sun as grain. The seeds are counted carefully, distributed among the village's most skilled gardeners. Your mother receives 7 beans, which she wraps in a scrap of clean linen like they're precious gems. Plant them in the warmest spot, the traveller advises, against a south-facing wall if you have one. They grow quickly, climb high. He stays only long enough to trade his knowledge for a meal, then continues on his way, heading northwest with more seed pouches for other villagers. That afternoon, your mother takes you to help plant the beans. You find the warmest corner of your small garden where the wall of your home provides some shelter. The soil there is poor in normal times. You wouldn't bother planting in it, but you work in some precious composted material saved from kitchen scraps to give the beans a fighting chance. 1 hand deep, your mother instructs, showing you how to press your finger into the soil to the right depth. Too shallow and they'll dry out, too deep and they'll rot before they sprout. Each bean goes into its hole with a whispered prayer, a mix of Christian invocation and older charms that your mother doesn't even seem aware she's blending together. You cover them carefully with soil, then water them with a few precious drops from the rain barrel. Now we wait, your mother says, but her tone carries little conviction. So many crops have failed already under the darkened sky. As Father Cuthbert and Dunstan leave for the bishop's meeting, the village settles into a new rhythm of survival. Each day is a matter of careful calculation. How much food to eat, how much to save, how far to roam for foraging without exhausting your strength. How to maintain hope when the sun remains a dim, copper-coloured disk that gives little warmth or light. Your family adapts. Your father learns new ways to set snares that catch the confused rabbits that venture out at unusual hours. Your mother becomes skilled at stretching meager ingredients into meals that at least dull the constant ache of hunger. You and your siblings develop sharp eyes for edible plants that might have gone unnoticed before. One evening, about a week after the beans were planted, your sister calls out excitedly from the garden corner, "Look, look, they're growing." And indeed, tiny green shoots have pushed up through the soil, reaching toward what little light filters through the hazy sky. It's a small miracle, but in these dark days, small miracles sustain you. That night, as you curl up on your straw pallet, the constant gnaw of hunger in your belly is slightly eased by something else. A fragile seedling of hope, as tenacious as the bean sprouts pushing up through the darkened earth. Autumn should bring harvest. It should bring feasting and full storerooms and preparations for winter made with confidence. Instead, as the dim summer gives way to an even dimmer fall, your village faces the cruel truth that there isn't enough food to go around. The beans your mother planted have grown a small miracle in the weakened light. They've climbed the side of your house, their pale stems reaching desperately upward. But the pods they produce are small and few. You help her harvest them carefully, saving some for immediate eating and some for next year's seed, if there is a next year. Morning brings a heavy mist that clings to the ground, refusing to burn off under the dulled sun. The air smells of smoke and rot and the peculiar metallic tang that has become normal since the darkness fell. "We're going to the monastery today," your father announces at breakfast. A thin porridge made from the last of your stored grain, mixed with ground acorns. The headman wants every family to send someone. Father Cuthbert returned last night with news. "What news?" you ask, scraping your wooden bowl to get every last morsel. "That's what we'll find out," he replies, his face giving nothing away. "You're chosen to go with him. As one of the older children, you're useful but not essential for the day's foraging. Your mother and siblings will continue the endless search for edible plants and check the snares while you're gone." The monastery lies half a day's walk to the east. In normal times, you'd rarely have cause to go there. The monks keep mostly to themselves, tending their gardens and copying their manuscripts. But they also store grain and preserve knowledge, both increasingly precious commodities. As you join the gathering near the headman's house, you're struck by how much everyone has changed since summer. Faces are leaner, clothes hang more loosely, and eyes hold a wariness that wasn't there before. About 20 villagers have assembled for the journey, including the headman himself and Father Cuthbert, who looks exhausted from his recent travels. "We'll follow the old Roman road," the headman announces. "Stay together. There have been reports of desperate people in the forests." With that ominous warning, you set off. The Roman road is now little more than a straight path through the landscape, its stones long since carried off for building materials. Still, it offers the most direct route to the monastery. As you walk, Father Cuthbert shares snippets of what he learned at the bishop's gathering. "The darkness stretches from Hibernia to Constantinople," he says. "Some say beyond. Ships coming from the far north report that it's worse there. The sun barely rises at all." "What's causing it?" someone asks. "Did the bishop say?" Father Cuthbert hesitates. "Some believe it's divine punishment. Others speak of a great mountain that erupted far to the south, spewing ash into the heavens." "Can prayers lift it?" asks a woman who has been particularly devout since the darkness began. "We must always pray," the priest answers carefully, "but the bishop also advised practical measures. That's why we're going to the monastery. They've preserved knowledge from the ancient world that might help us survive." The journey is mostly silent after that. Walking takes more energy than it once did, and no one has calories to waste on idle conversation. About midday, you crest a small hill and catch sight of the monastery in the distance. Its stone walls rise from the misty landscape like a memory of more solid times. Smoke rises from within. They still have firewood then. As you approach, you see that you're not the only visitors. Several groups from other villages are already gathered at the gates, which remain firmly closed. "They're only letting people in a few at a time," explains a tired-looking man from a neighbouring settlement. "Too many folks coming at once, looking for food and help. They're afraid of being overrun. You wait with the others, stamping your feet against the unusual cold." Autumn has barely begun, but already the air carries a winter bite. Eventually, a monk appears at a small side door and beckons to your group. "The abbot will speak with you now," he says, his voice raspy as though from disuse. "Follow me, please." Inside the monastery walls, you're struck by how orderly everything remains. The gardens, though showing the same stunted growth as plants everywhere, are well tended. The buildings are in good repair. The monks move with purpose, their thin faces suggesting they too eat less than before, but their manner retaining a discipline that your village has begun to lose. The abbot receives your group in a large room, warmed by a small fire. He's a tall, gaunt man with intelligent eyes that seem to assess each of you quickly. "Father Cuthbert has told us of your village's plight," he begins without preamble. "It is the same story we hear from every direction. The darkness has brought famine, and famine brings other troubles in its wake. Can you help us?" the headman asks directly. "We have children who are failing." The abbot's face shows genuine regret. "We cannot give what we do not have in abundance. Our own stores grow low." He raises a hand to forestall protest. "However, we can share knowledge that may help you through the coming winter, and we can take in a few of the most vulnerable, the very young, the very old, if your situation becomes truly desperate." A murmur runs through your group. The idea of separating families brings mixed feelings of relief and dread. "What knowledge can help us now?" asks an older man bitterly. "Can your books make the sun return?" "No," the abbot answers calmly, "but they can tell us how others survived when similar darkness fell in times past." This catches everyone's attention. "This has happened before?" your father asks. "Not in living memory. But yes, the chronicles speak of years when the sun dimmed and cold gripped the land out of season. Our oldest manuscripts, copied from texts that survived the fall of Rome, describe such events." He gestures, and a younger monk brings forward several bound volumes. "These tell of methods for preserving food when salt is scarce, ways to find water when sources freeze, how to treat the illnesses that come with hunger and cold." For the next hour, the abbot and his monks share practical knowledge gleaned from ancient texts. Some of it you already know from village lore and Aefri's teachings, but much is new. They show you how to smoke meat in ways that require less wood, how to identify winter fungi that grow on trees even in the coldest months, how to make water safe to drink when it's drawn from questionable sources. One monk, Brother Thomas, takes particular interest in your group. He's younger than most, with a regional accent that marks him as coming from near your village. "I grew up not far from you," he confirms when your father asks. "My family had a small farm near the old oak grove." "Had?" your father inquires. Brother Thomas's face clouds. "They're gone now. The great sickness that swept through 10 years ago." He makes the sign of the cross. "The monastery took me in as an orphan." As he speaks with your father, you notice a storeroom door ajar behind him. Inside, you glimpse shelves that are far less full than they should be at this time of year. The monastery, for all its apparent order, is not as secure as it first appeared. The abbot concludes the meeting by presenting your headman with a small sack. "Dried peas," he explains. "They'll grow even in poor light if you plant them now before the worst cold comes. They won't yield much, but perhaps enough to make a difference." It's a generous gift, but as you leave the monastery, the reality of your situation settles back over your group like the omnipresent mist. The knowledge gained is valuable, but it doesn't fill empty bellies today. On the return journey, you pass a small group heading in the opposite direction. They're travelling with all their possessions clearly. They've abandoned their home. Children drag bundles too big for them. An old man is supported between two younger ones. Their faces are hollow with hunger and hopelessness. "Where are you bound?" your headman asks them. "South," replies a woman who seems to be their leader. "They say the darkness is lifting there." that crops grow again. It's a long journey, Father Cuthbert warns. The roads are dangerous. The woman looks at the children in her group, their thin faces and shadowed eyes. Staying is more dangerous. We've buried 3 already. Better to die moving toward hope than sitting waiting for the end. No one argues with her logic. Your group continues homeward, each lost in thought about the choice these people have made. Is it better to stay where you know the land and have community, or risk everything on the promise of light returning elsewhere? When you return to your village, you find it changed again. A crowd has gathered outside one of the homes. The headman pushes through to find old Godwin, the charcoal maker, being laid out by his weeping daughter. His heart, she explains through tears. He went to sleep and didn't wake up. But everyone knows the truth. Old Godwin had been giving his food to his grandchildren for weeks. His heart gave out because his body had nothing left to sustain it. He's not the first in your village to die since the darkness came, but he's the first where hunger can be named as the clear cause. A line has been crossed. That night, your family eats a meal made from the knowledge gained at the monastery. Your mother has found a fallen log hosting the pale winter mushrooms the monks described, and she adds them to a thin stew. It's still not enough, but it's something new, something that might not have been in your pot without the day's journey. There's talk of splitting up, your father tells your mother quietly. After your siblings have fallen asleep, some want to go south, like those folks we passed on the road. And you? She asks, her face illuminated by the dying embers of the fire. What do you think? He's silent for a long time. I think we still have roots here, food we know how to find, people who will help us if it comes to the worst. Out there, he gestures vaguely toward the darkness beyond your walls. Out there, we're just more mouths to feed wherever we go. The children are getting weaker, your mother says, a tremor in her voice, especially the little ones. I know. Your father stares into the fading fire. We'll give it until the first hard frost. If things haven't improved by then, we'll talk again about leaving. The next morning brings the first real crisis to your village's communal spirit. The grain stores, carefully rationed for weeks, have been broken into during the night. A significant amount is missing. The headman calls everyone together. His face is grim as he surveys the assembled villagers. Someone among us has stolen from all of us, he announces. This isn't just theft, it's a threat to everyone's survival. Faces turn suspicious. Neighbours who have known each other all their lives suddenly look at one another with doubt. Who was hungry enough, desperate enough to take food that meant life or death for the community? Whoever did this, come forward now, the headman continues. Return what you took, and we can discuss this reasonably. Silence stretches. No one steps forward. Then we have no choice but to search every home, he concludes. This provokes immediate protest. Even in these desperate times, a person's home is their last bastion of privacy and dignity. But the headman is adamant. This is about survival now, all of us, not just some. The searches begin, conducted by the headman and 2 trusted men. They move from house to house, looking through storage areas and hidden corners. When they reach your home, your father welcomes them with tight-lipped courtesy. They search quickly but thoroughly, finding nothing beyond the meagre supplies your family has legitimately gathered. I never thought it would be you, the headman tells your father, but we must check everyone. 3 homes later, they find the grainer part of it hidden in the thatch of Wulfric's roof. Wulfric, whose youngest child died in the spring before the darkness even came. Wulfric, who has 3 remaining children, all showing the swollen bellies and thinning hair of severe hunger. When confronted, Wulfric doesn't deny his theft. My children are starving, he says simply. What would any of you do? The village must now face its hardest decision yet. In normal times, theft might be punished by public humiliation, restitution, or in extreme cases, banishment. But these are not normal times. Banishment now is almost certainly a death sentence. Yet letting the theft go unpunished undermines the very cooperation that has kept the village alive so far. The debate rages well into the evening. Some call for strict justice, others for mercy. In the end, the headman makes the decision. Wulfric will return what remains of the grain to the communal store, he pronounces, and to make amends, he and his eldest son will take on the most dangerous hunting duties for the next month seeking game in the deep forest where the wolves have grown bold. It's a clever compromise. Punishment that could potentially bring more food to the village rather than reducing its already strained resources. But the incident leaves a mark on everyone. Trust, once broken, is hard to restore. That night, more families set watches over their own small stores of food. The darkness outside has crept inside, into the ways you look at one another. The days grow shorter, though it's hard to tell with the sun already so dim. The cold deepens. Your family adds more straw to the walls of your home for insulation. The thatch of your roof is reinforced to keep out the increasing rain. Every bit of preparation feels like a statement of faith that you'll survive to see the darkness lift. A week after the theft incident, a trader arrives in the village, an increasingly rare sight. He's thin like everyone else, his pack lighter than it would have been in better times, but he still maintains the brisk manner of someone used to making deals. "I've come from the coast," he announces to the gathered villagers. "Travelled through 6 villages to get here." "What news?" the headman asks, the question everyone wants answered. "Or mixed," the trader replies honestly. The darkness continues, though some say it's less deep than it was. The southern kingdoms fare somewhat better, more food stored from better times. Here in the north, he shrugs, it's much the same everywhere, people getting by. Barely. "Do you have anything to trade?" someone calls out. "Salt? Iron?" The trader opens his pack. "Some salt, yes, needles, thread, a few medicines from the south." He hesitates. "I won't lie to you, the prices are high. Everything's scarce." What follows is a subdued version of the trading that would normally bring excitement to the village. A few families have items valuable enough to exchange for the trader's goods: a finely woven blanket, a wood carving, a small silver pin passed down for generations. Most, like your family, can only watch. The trader stays the night, sharing news from beyond your isolated community in exchange for a place by the communal fire. His tales are sobering. Some villages have been abandoned entirely. In others, the old and sick have quietly slipped away, sacrificing themselves so the young might have a better chance. Wolves grow bolder, coming into settlements at night, and across the sea the Frankish kingdoms fare no better, with reports of people fleeing the northern territories in large numbers. Yet there are threads of hope in his stories too. Communities that have found clever ways to adapt. A fishing village that discovered a new technique for preserving their catch with smoke and certain herbs when salt ran out. A settlement near a Roman ruin that repurposed the ancient hippocaust heating system to grow mushrooms in the warm darkness. People survive, the trader concludes. They always do. Some, anyway. The next morning, as he prepares to leave, he takes your father aside. "I didn't want to say this in front of everyone," he murmurs, "but I've seen the signs before. Your village is near the edge. The food's running out faster than you're finding new sources." He glances around to make sure no one is listening. The monastery to the west is taking in children. Just the children. Keeping them alive until things improve. Your father's face hardens. "We keep our families together." The trader shrugs. For now, perhaps, but winter's coming, real winter, on top of this cursed darkness. He shoulders his pack. Just something to consider before it's too late. You pretend not to have overheard, but the trader's words haunt you as he disappears down the road, heading to the next village with his diminishing pack of goods and his burden of grim news. That evening, the first real snow falls far earlier than it should. The white flakes drift through the perpetual twilight, settling on a world already too cold and too dark. Everyone watches with dread. Winter arriving early means only one thing: even greater hardship ahead. In your home, huddled close to the small fire, your family takes stock of what you have and what you need to survive. The beans have been dried and stored. The knowledge from the monastery has helped you find new food sources. The community, despite its strains, still stands together. But the shadow of the trader's warning lies across it all. Winter is coming, and the sun remains hidden. The winter that comes isn't like any winter you've known. It's deeper, darker, colder. By midwinter, what would normally be midwinter, though time has become strangely distorted under the perpetual gloom, the snow lies knee-deep around the village. The temperature has fallen so low that water freezes in wooden buckets inside your home overnight. Your family now sleeps huddled together on pallets pushed to the center of your small house. Body heat has become as precious a resource as food. The fire is kept burning but small, conserving the dwindling supply of firewood. The walls have been packed with extra straw for insulation, the cracks stuffed with moss and mud. Still, the cold seeps in, a living thing with teeth and claws. Boots, your father says one morning, as you all sit close to the fire eating a breakfast of hot water flavoured with a few precious dried herbs and thickened with a handful of acorn flour. We need to check everyone's boots. It's not an idle concern. With the snow so deep and the cold so bitter, feet are vulnerable. Already there's been word from the far end of the village of someone losing toes to frostbite. You all dutifully extend your feet, showing your leather shoes wrapped with strips of woolen cloth for extra warmth. Your father examines each one, making repairs with precious sinew thread where needed, adding extra layers of rabbit fur to your youngest brother's boots. We're running low on oil for the lamps, your mother reports, checking the small clay vessels that provide light during the increasingly long nights. We'll use them only when absolutely needed, your father decides. Darkness outside, darkness inside. He tries to make it sound like a joke, but no one laughs. Outside, the village has taken on a siege mentality. Paths are kept clear between houses, but only the most essential travel happens now. The communal hall has become the centre of life. Families take turns staying there, where a larger fire can be maintained. The remaining livestock are a few thin cows, some goats, a handful of chickens that hardly lay anymore have been brought into shelters adjoining human habitations for mutual warmth. Today is your family's day at the communal hall. You bundle up in every layer you own and make the short but frigid journey. Inside, the hall is warmer than your home, but still far from comfortable. About 30 people are gathered, nearly a third of the village. They sit in family groups, talking quietly, mending clothes, carving useful implements from scraps of wood. The headman has organised a rotation for communal hall days to ensure that everyone gets at least some time in the warmer space each week. It's also become a way to check on every family regularly. Those who don't appear for their assigned day receive a visit to make sure they're still able to come. Not everyone always is. 3 more villagers have died since the first snow fell. An old man simply went to sleep and didn't wake up. A woman developed a cough that deepened into something worse. And most terribly, a small child, barely 2 years old, faded away despite her parents giving her most of their own food rations. The burials were difficult, with the ground frozen solid. The bodies were laid in the snow-covered churchyard, stones piled over them to keep predators away until spring thaws allow proper burial. If spring ever comes, your thoughts are interrupted by a commotion at the door. A hunting party has returned, 2 men half dragging a third between them. What happened? The headman hurries forward. Wolves, gasps one of the men, easing his injured companion onto a bench near the fire. They've never been so bold. The injured hunter has deep gashes on one leg where fangs tore through his woolen leggings. As the village's healer, an old woman named Edith, tends to him, he tells his story through gritted teeth. We were following deer tracks about half a day's walk north, he explains. Good tracks, fresh. Then we realised we weren't the only ones following. The wolves had surrounded them, at least 7 by their count, not the usual cautious behaviour of wolves that normally avoid humans. These were gaunt with hunger, driven by the same desperation that afflicts everything living under the darkened sky. They attacked without warning, the hunter continues. Gunnar got the first one with his spear. I got another, but then they were on us. They had fought their way clear and managed to reach a stand of trees where they could defend themselves better. The wolves had followed for a time before giving up. They'll be back, the hunter concludes grimly. They know there's food here. The news casts a pall over the gathering. Wolves threatening hunting parties means even less chance of bringing in meat. It's also a warning that the village itself might become a target if the pack grows desperate enough. We'll organise larger hunting groups, the headman decides. No one goes out alone or even in pairs anymore, and we'll need to set watches at night. The added precautions mean more work for everyone when energy is already in short supply, but the alternative is unthinkable. Later, as the short, dim day fades toward true darkness, your family returns home. Your father immediately sets about reinforcing the door with additional bars. Your mother checks that the shutters are secured over the small window openings. Are the wolves really going to come into the village? Your younger sister asks, her eyes wide with fear. No, your father assures her, though you notice he continues his work on the door even as he speaks. But it's better to be careful. That night, you're awakened by howling, closer than you've ever heard it before. Your father rises silently, taking up his hunting spear. He stands by the door, listening. The howls continue for what seems like hours, sometimes receding, sometimes drawing nearer. Eventually they fade entirely, but your father keeps his vigil until the dim light of dawn begins to filter through the cracks in the shutters. Morning reveals no tracks in the fresh dusting of snow around your home, but other villagers report seeing wolf prints at the edges of the settlement. The pack is testing, probing for weakness. At the communal well, where you've gone to break the ice and draw water, you overhear two women talking in low voices. "Said they're taking anyone who can make it to their gates," one murmurs. "The journey alone would kill most of us," the other replies. "Not if we wait for better weather. The trader said it might be warmer soon. And if it's not, if this is the new normal?" The question hangs in the frigid air, unanswered. You finish filling your bucket and hurry home, the water sloshing and already forming a thin skin of ice on its surface. At home, your mother has laid out the family's remaining food stores on the small table. It's a sobering sight. A small sack of dried beans, a dwindling supply of acorn flour, some dried mushrooms collected using the monastery's knowledge, a few strips of dried meat rabbit mostly, with one precious piece of venison, dried berries gathered in the summer, now worth their weight in silver for the vitamin-rich sustenance they provide. "How long?" your father asks simply. Your mother's face is tight with worry. 2 weeks at current rations, maybe 3 if we stretch it further. And after that, she has no answer. The day after next brings a break in the bitter cold, not warmth by any normal standard, but the wind shifts to the south and the constant snow eases. Your father declares it's time for a major hunting expedition. "We'll go further than usual," he tells you as he prepares. "There's a valley beyond the old oak forest where game might be sheltering. You've been chosen to join the hunting party, along with 6 other men and 2 women known for their skill with slings, old enough to be useful but not so essential to the village's daily functioning that your absence will be a hardship. It's your first major hunt, and despite the danger, you feel a flicker of pride at being included. Your mother helps you prepare, wrapping your feet with extra rags inside your boots, making sure your woolen cap covers your ears completely. "Be careful," she says, and you hear the fear behind the simple words. Too many have left on hunting trips and not returned, lost to cold or predators or simple exhaustion. The hunting party assembles in the grey pre-dawn. Everyone is bundled against the cold, carrying what weapons they have: spears, bows, slings, snare ropes. In better times, it would almost look like a group preparing for a sporting contest. Now, the gaunt faces and desperate eyes tell a different story. This isn't sport, but survival. "We stay together," declares Oswald, the lead hunter. "No splitting up, no matter what we see. The wolves are still out there." You travel through the snow-covered landscape, following game trails that are faint but present. The forest, when you reach it, offers some shelter from the biting wind. Bare branches creak overhead. Occasionally, a clump of snow falls with a soft thump. Hours into your journey, one of the hunters spots tracks deer, and relatively fresh. "They're heading toward the valley," Oswald confirms after examining the prints. "Just as we hoped." The trail leads you deeper into unfamiliar territory. You've never been this far from the village before. The trees begin to thin, and ahead you can make out the depression of a small valley sheltered on three sides by low hills. And there, moving slowly through the snow, is a small herd of deer, perhaps a dozen animals, thin but alive, pawing at the snow to reach whatever vegetation lies beneath. "We need to encircle them," Oswald whispers. "Drive them toward the far end of the valley where it narrows. It's a dangerous strategy. Getting in position means spreading out, becoming more vulnerable, but the potential reward is too great to ignore." The hunters move with painstaking slowness, using the trees and folds of land for cover. You follow an older hunter named Leofric, trying to match his careful movements exactly. The deer continue grazing, occasionally raising their heads to test the air, but the wind is in your favor, carrying your scent away from them. Finally, Oswald gives the signal, a soft bird call that sounds entirely natural. The trap closes. Hunters emerge from cover, shouting and waving their arms. The deer startle, then flee in the only direction open to them toward the narrow end of the valley where hunters wait with bows and spears. What follows is both terrible and wonderful. 3 deer fall to arrows and spears. A 4th is injured, but escapes with the rest of the herd. It's a stunning success, more meat at once than the village has seen since the darkness began. The work of field dressing the carcasses begins immediately. Nothing can be wasted. The blood is collected in water skins. It will be used for black pudding. The entrails are examined carefully, some parts set aside for eating, others for uses like sinew for sewing. Even the bones will be valuable for tools and broth. As you work alongside the others, your hands numb with cold, despite mittens, a strange sound reaches your ears. Not wolves, but something else moving through the forest at the edge of the valley. Everyone freezes, listening. "People," Leofric whispers finally, "coming this way." Oswald signals for everyone to gather the meat and prepare to leave. Strangers could mean danger, but it's too late for a clean escape. The other group emerges from the trees before you can disappear. There are about 10 of them, as ragged and hungry looking as your own group. They stop when they see you, their faces showing the same wariness you feel. "We mean no harm," calls their leader, a tall man with a greying beard. "We're from the settlement near the old Roman fort. 3 days east." Oswald steps forward as your group's representative. "What brings you this far west?" "Hunger," the man answers simply. "Same as you, I'd guess. The fort is, there's nothing left there." A murmur runs through your hunting party. Nothing left could mean many things, none of them good. The 2 groups regard each other cautiously. The stranger's eyes lock onto your deer carcasses, and you can see the naked hunger in their expressions. "We have families," their leader says. "Children." It's not quite a request, not quite a threat, but the implication is clear. They need food desperately. Oswald is silent for a long moment. Your village barely has enough for itself. Sharing means hunger. Not sharing means turning away fellow humans in need and possibly provoking a conflict no one has the strength for. "We have 3 deer, Oswald finally says. "You can have one." Relief washes over the strangers' faces. "We won't forget this," their leader promises. "If the light ever returns, if things ever improve, we'll remember." The deer is handed over, and the 2 groups part ways, each returning to their own hungry communities with news and meat and the strange, bittersweet feeling of an encounter that could have turned ugly, but instead affirmed something essential about humanity that persists even in the darkest times. The journey back to the village is exhausting but buoyed by your success. Despite sharing with the strangers, you're returning with more meat than anyone dared hope for. It will make a crucial difference. As you approach the village, people come out to meet you, alerted by the sentry posted at the edge of the settlement. There are cries of joy when they see your burden. Hands reach out to help carry the precious meat. Faces that have grown accustomed to disappointment light up with hope. The meat is taken to the communal hall, where it will be properly butchered and distributed according to the system the village has developed, equal shares per person, with extra portions for the very young, the very old, and those doing the most physically demanding work. That evening, for the first time in months, the smell of roasting meat fills the air. A small celebration takes shape in the communal hall. It's subdued by the standards of better times. No one has the energy for true revelry, but there's a lightness that's been absent for too long. Musicians bring out instruments that have been carefully preserved despite the desperate times. A fiddle, a small hand drum, a bone whistle. The music is halting at first, the player's fingers stiff with cold and lack of practice, but it grows more confident. Someone begins to sing an old song about spring returning after winter. Others join in. Your family sits together, savouring small portions of the fresh meat. The rich taste after so long without is almost overwhelming. Your younger siblings' faces are smeared with grease, their eyes bright with rare contentment. Will this help us last until spring? You ask your father quietly. He considers the question carefully. It helps, he says finally. It's not enough by itself, but it gives us more time for something to change. For the sun to return? Yes, or for us to find new ways to survive if it doesn't. The music continues, people singing despite their hunger, despite the cold, despite the darkness that has hung over the world for months now. It's an act of defiance as much as celebration. As you watch the firelight play on the faces of your family and neighbours, you realise something has shifted. The survival of your community is still far from certain. Hunger still gnaws, the cold still threatens, but the successful hunt, the encounter with the strangers that ended in sharing rather than violence, the simple pleasure of one good meal and some music, these things have kindled something that had nearly gone out. Hope, fragile and flickering, but alive. Later that night, as your family returns home through the snow, your father points upward. Look. You follow his gesture. Above, through a break in the clouds, a few stars are visible dim and distant, but definitely there. Stars, your younger sister breathes, wonder in her voice. Some of the younger children have nearly forgotten what the night sky looked like before the darkness came. They were always there, your father says, behind the clouds, behind the ash. Some things endure, even when we can't see them. You stand together for a moment, necks craned upward, watching the small patch of stars. Then the clouds close again, and the moment passes. But like the hope kindled by the hunt, the memory of those stars remains, a reminder that the darkness, however long and terrible, is not, cannot be, permanent. Inside your home, as you settle onto your pallets for the night, your mother begins a story, an old tale about how the sun was once stolen and hidden away, and how a clever hero tricked the thief into revealing its hiding place. And that's why, she concludes, the sun always returns, no matter how long the night or how deep the winter. Your siblings are asleep before the story ends, but you lie awake a little longer thinking about endurance, the deer somehow surviving in the frozen valley, the strangers travelling for days through the snow in search of food, your village holding together despite hunger and fear, and your family, still finding reasons to tell stories in the darkness. Outside, the wind rises, carrying the promise of more snow, but for the first time in months, its howl doesn't sound quite so threatening. You've survived this far, perhaps, just perhaps, you can survive long enough to see the sun's full strength again. The deepest part of winter passes slowly, each day a battle against cold and hunger, but gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, something begins to change. The bitter cold eases slightly, the snow stops falling quite so frequently, and though the sun remains a dim presence behind the ashen sky, there's a sense that the wheel of the year is turning. Spring is coming, even to this darkened world. One morning, you wake to an unfamiliar sound dripping. The snow on your roof is melting in patches, forming icicles that catch what little sunlight filters through. It's not the spring thaw of normal years, nothing so dramatic, but it's change. Your father notices it too. "We should check the south-facing slopes," he says during the family's meagre breakfast. "If the snow is thinning, we might find early plants." Hope is a dangerous thing after so many months of disappointment, but you can't help feeling a flicker of it as you set out with your father and older sister. The three of you carry digging sticks and small sacks for anything edible you might find. The path through the village reveals other signs of subtle change. People are outside more, repairing things that were neglected during the deepest cold. A group is working to clear the central area, breaking up the trampled, icy snow and moving it aside to expose the earth beneath. Others are checking gardens, preparing the soil in sheltered corners where planting might soon be possible. Leofric says he saw geese flying north yesterday, a woman tells your father as you pass. First birds returning, good sign, your father nods, means there's food to be found somewhere. Beyond the village, the forest is still largely snow-covered, but as you make your way to a south-facing hillside, you begin to see dark patches where the ground is being revealed. Your father leads you to one such spot and kneels, brushing away the remaining snow with gloved hands. There, he says, pointing to a tiny sprig of green pushing up through the cold mud. Wood sorrel, first growth. Your sister is already digging carefully around the plant, loosening the soil to reach its roots. The small leaves will be added to tonight's pottage, bringing a touch of freshness to the winter-worn diet. The roots, though tiny, contain precious carbohydrates. You spread out, searching the exposed patches of earth. It becomes a game of sorts, each new plant a small victory. You find more wood sorrel, some chickweed, the first shoots of stinging nettles. None of it amounts to much in terms of actual food, but after months of dwindling stores and desperate rationing, finding anything fresh feels miraculous. "Father," your sister calls suddenly, "over here." You both hurry to where she's crouched at the base of a large oak tree. She points to a cluster of mushrooms growing from the damp bark oyster mushrooms, one of the varieties the monastery monks had described as safe winter forage. "Good eyes," your father praises, carefully harvesting the fungus. "These will make a real difference to the pot tonight." By midday, your sacks contain a modest but precious collection of early spring edibles. It's not enough to end the hunger, not nearly, but it's something new, something that wasn't available in the depths of winter. As you make your way back to the village, you pass Ephra, the old woman who has become even more valued for her knowledge of wild foods. She's out despite her age, supported by two younger women pointing out plants that others might miss. "Ah, you've found the oysters," she nods approvingly when your father shows her your harvest. "Good, good. And I see wood sorrel too. The bitterness will help wake up your winter-dulled tongue." "Have you seen anything else coming up?" your father asks her. "Coltsfoot will be next," she replies, "then ground elder, wild garlic if we're lucky, the bulbs might have survived the cold, and the first fiddleheads should appear soon along the stream banks." She gestures with her gnarled hand. "The earth wakes even in this unnatural gloom. Life persists." Back in the village, you find people gathered around a newcomer messenger from another settlement 2 days' travel away. "Reports from the south," he's saying as you join the crowd. "Ships have reached the coast bringing news from Gaul. They say the darkness is definitely lifting there. Crops were stunted last year but not completely failed, and this spring looks more promising." "What about here?" Someone asking more. "Any change coming for us?" The messenger shrugs. "If it's lifting in the south, it should eventually reach us too. That's what people say anyway. The wise ones, the ones who study the sky." It's a thin thread of hope, but people grasp it anyway. If the darkness is receding somewhere, anywhere, then it's not permanent. It can end. The world is not forever changed. The next day brings the first real test of this fragile hope. A late winter storm blows in, bringing fresh snow and biting cold. It feels like a betrayal after the signs of thaw, a cruel reminder that winter's grip hasn't fully loosened. People retreat to their homes again, spirits dampened. The brief surge of outdoor activity ceases. Fires are built back up against the renewed cold. But there's a difference this time. The storm is seen as a temporary setback rather than a permanent condition. People have glimpsed something beyond the darkness and cold, even if it's still distant. In your home, your mother sorts through the wild plants you gathered yesterday, setting some aside for immediate use, preparing others for drying. "We should make a proper record," she says thoughtfully, "of all we've learned about surviving, the plants, the hunting methods, the ways to conserve food and fuel, so we don't forget when better times come." "If better times come," your father corrects, but gently. "When?" your mother insists. The sun will return, the crops will grow again, but we shouldn't lose this knowledge. It's the first time in months that anyone in your family has spoken with such certainty about the future, not just surviving the next day or week, but looking ahead to a time beyond the crisis. Your father thinks about this, then nods slowly. You're right. We've learned things our ancestors knew, but we'd forgotten. Hard-won knowledge. That evening, while the storm winds howl outside, your family begins the record. Using precious charcoal on scraped birch bark, your father writes while your mother dictates plants and when to find them, preservation methods, hunting techniques adapted to the change patterns of wildlife. You and your siblings contribute too, describing things you've observed or learned. It's a small act of faith, this record-keeping, faith that there will be a future in which such knowledge might be useful, might be passed on. The storm lasts 3 days, but when it finally breaks, spring's approach seems to accelerate. The new snow melts quickly. The days, while still unnaturally dim, grow noticeably longer. More birds appear, returning from wherever they found shelter during the darkest months. One particularly significant day comes when the headman calls everyone to the centre of the village. A group of men has just returned from checking the old Roman road that leads to the larger settlement to the east. The road is clear enough for travel now, the headman announces. Which means we can resume contact with other villages, pool knowledge and resources. He pauses, looking around at the gathered faces. It also means we need to make a decision about those who wish to journey south. The idea has been discussed quietly all winter, the possibility of leaving, heading toward regions where the darkness might be lifting, where crops might grow better. Now, with travel becoming possible again, the theoretical has become actual. I'm calling for a council tonight, the headman continues. Each family should discuss their intentions before then. That afternoon, your family holds its own private council around your small hearth fire. I still believe our best chance is here, your father says. We know this land. We've survived the worst of the darkness. If things are improving elsewhere, they'll improve here too. Eventually, your mother nods slowly. And we have neighbours, community. Out there, we'd be alone. Some are definitely leaving, your older sister points out. Edith and her family, the blacksmith and his wife. They've already started packing. Let them go if they must, your father replies. Each family must decide for itself, but we stay. The village council that night is solemn. About a quarter of the families have decided to leave, to travel south in search of better conditions. The rest, like yours, have chosen to remain. Those who go and those who stay, we're still one people, the headman declares. If the southern lands prove better, send word. If conditions here improve, we'll do the same. And if any who leave change their minds, there will always be a place for you here. It's a generous statement, considering how scarce resources remain. But there's a recognition that survival now depends on cooperation, on maintaining human connections, even across distance. The next few days are busy with preparations. Those leaving ready themselves for a journey of unknown length and difficulty. Those staying organise to fill the gaps that will be left by their departing neighbours. The blacksmith, before he goes, works furiously to repair as many tools as possible. To pay my debt, he explains when your father brings him a broken digging stick. For all the years the village supported my craft. The healer, Edith, spends her last days making medicines from the earliest spring plants, carefully explaining their uses to the woman who will take her place. There's sorrow in these preparations, but also a strange energy. For the first time in months, people are acting rather than just enduring. On the morning of departure, the entire village gathers to see the travellers off. Bundles are shouldered, children strapped to backs or loaded into handcarts along with the most essential possessions. Farewells are said, promises to send news exchanged, and then they're gone. A diminishing line of people heading east to join the old Roman road that will take them south. The village feels immediately emptier, quieter. Will we ever see them again? Your younger brother asks, watching until the last figure disappears from view. I don't know, your father answers honestly, but I hope so. The reduced village quickly reorganizes. There are fewer mouths to feed, but also fewer hands for work. Everyone takes on new responsibilities. You find yourself apprenticed to the new healer, learning to identify medicinal plants and prepare remedies, a role you would never have been considered for in normal times. The days continue to lengthen, the snow recedes to patches in the shadiest spots, and one remarkable morning you wake to a sound that had almost been forgotten birdsong, real birdsong, not just the occasional call of a raven or crow, but the varied chorus that should accompany spring. "They know," your mother says, pausing in her work to listen. "The birds know something's changing." That same day brings more news via a trader who has braved the muddy spring roads. He carries actual goods for trade salt, needles, a few luxury items like dried southern fruits, but more importantly, he brings information. The darkness is definitely receding. He confirms to the eagerly gathered villagers, slowly, mind you, not like someone blew out a candle, but the sun grows stronger week by week as you head south. How far south must one go to find normal sunlight? Someone asks. Proper normal, like before? The trader considers. I've not seen it myself yet, but they say in the Mediterranean lands, crops are growing almost as they should. Ships are sailing regular routes again. Life is continuing. And here, the headman presses, what's your judgment of our situation, having travelled widely? The trader looks around, taking in the thin faces, the patched clothing, the carefully maintained tools and structures. You've done well to survive, he says finally, better than many places I've seen, and yes, the light is returning here too, just more slowly. By midsummer, you might see real improvement. It's measured encouragement, not false hope, and somehow that makes it more believable. The trader stays 3 days, exchanging his goods for whatever the village can spare, mostly handcrafts, some preserved foods, a few small treasures that families part with reluctantly. When he leaves, he carries letters from those who stayed to those who left, maintaining the connection between the divided community. As true spring finally takes hold, the work of survival transforms into something more forward-looking. Gardens are prepared with care, precious seeds planted according to the knowledge gained during the dark months. Hunting and gathering continue, but with less desperate intensity. One significant project begins at the urging of Brother Thomas, who occasionally visits from the monastery. Under his guidance, the village starts constructing raised beds in the sunniest spots, wooden frames filled with the richest soil they can create, mixing rotted leaves, animal manure and ash from the winter's fires. These will warm more quickly than the ground, Brother Thomas explains, and the soil can be enriched more easily. The plants will grow better, even in reduced light. It's labour-intensive work, but everyone participates. There's a sense that they're not just surviving anymore, but building something, planning for a future. The monastery itself has undergone changes. When you accompany your father there one day to deliver some early spring mushrooms as a thank you for their earlier help, you find the monks have expanded their gardens significantly, using every available sunny spot. They've also started a new projector-detailed record of the dark time, combining observations from their own community with reports gathered from travellers. We must understand what happened, the abbot explains when your father asks about this work, both for practical reasons to be better prepared if it happens again, and for spiritual ones, to comprehend our place in God's creation. Do you believe it was God's will, your father asks. The darkness, the suffering. The abbot considers this carefully. I believe that in all things, even terrible ones, there are lessons to be learned. The darkness humbled us. It showed us our dependence on the natural world, on each other. Perhaps that is lesson enough. On the way home, you and your father stop at the top of a hill that offers a view across the surrounding countryside. The landscape is changing, patches of green appearing where before there was only brown and white, small streams glinting as they run free of ice, life reasserting itself. And above, though still muted, the sun seems just a fraction brighter than it was a week ago. "The abbot is right about one thing," your father says, gazing at the view. "We understand better now what matters." "What does matter?" you ask. He looks at you, then back at the land, stretching toward the horizon. This, the earth, each other, the knowledge passed down from those who faced hard times before us. He pauses. "And hope. Without that, none of the rest would have been enough." When you return to the village, you find unusual activity centered around the communal hall. A large fire has been built outside, and several women are preparing what appears to be a feast modest by the standards of before the darkness, but remarkable given the continuing scarcity. "What's happening?" your father asks as you approach. "First harvest," replies the headman, emerging from the hall with a proud smile. "Small, but worth celebrating." He leads you to a table where several baskets display the earliest yields from the village gardens and gathering efforts, tender spring greens, some small root vegetables, early herbs, wild onions and mushrooms. None of it amounts to much in terms of volume, but the variety is heartening after the monotony of winter fare. "We'll eat together tonight," the headman announces, "to mark the turning of the season, to remember those we've lost, and to look forward." That evening's gathering has a different feeling than any since the darkness began. There's still hunger, the portions remain small, but there's also genuine celebration. The music is more energetic, the conversations more animated. Stories are shared about the winter just endured. Tales of close calls, unexpected discoveries, moments of despair and surprising joy. Some are somber, honouring those who didn't survive. Others draw reluctant laughter, finding humour even in the hardest times. "Remember when the wolves surrounded the village for 3 nights straight," recalls one of the hunters, "and old Godwin climbed onto his roof with a burning brand, yelling at them like they were naughty children? Or when we tried to make bread from pine bark," adds a woman, making a face. "Even the dogs wouldn't eat it." These shared stories do something important. They transform individual suffering into collective experience, private fears into communal memory. They help make sense of what has happened, begin to place it in the past rather than the ever-present now. As the evening progresses, plans are discussed for the coming weeks and months. Seeds recently traded from neighbouring villages will be planted as soon as conditions allow. A fishing expedition to the distant lake is being organised. The damaged walls of the animal enclosures will be repaired in preparation for the eventual return of proper herds. It's all tentative, dependent on the continued improvement of conditions, but it's planning nonetheless. Forward motion. Late in the evening, as families begin to drift homeward, the oldest among you, Afri, who remembers famines from long ago, raises her cup of watered ale. "To those who endured," she says, her voice cracking with age but clear enough to carry, "and to those who didn't, may we honour both by remembering what we learned in the darkness." Cups are raised around the circle. "To remembering," comes the response. Later, lying on your pallet at home, you reflect on the strange journey of the past months. The village you live in now is not the same one where you first witnessed the dimming of the sun. It's smaller, sadder in some ways, its structures showing the effects of a hard winter, with minimal maintenance. Its people are thinner, more careworn, their eyes shadowed by memories of hunger and fear. But there's something else to a resilience that wasn't tested before, a knowledge hard-won through suffering, a deeper appreciation for simple things like fresh food and birdsong and the gradually strengthening sun. Outside, the night is clear enough that a few stars are visible. Tomorrow will bring more work, more challenges. The darkness hasn't fully lifted. Normal abundance hasn't returned. But you've survived the worst, and with each day the light grows a little stronger. As you drift towards sleep, you find yourself wondering about the seeds planted in darkness, not just the literal ones in the gardens, but the metaphorical ones as well. The ideas, the innovations, the new connections formed under pressure. What will they grow into when the sun finally returns in full? It's an interesting question to ponder, as sleep claims you a question about the future, a luxury you couldn't afford during the darkest days when only the present moment mattered. Now, at last, tomorrow seems worth imagining again. Summer arrives slowly, cautiously, as if uncertain of its welcome in a world so long dominated by darkness and cold. The days grow longer, warmer, though the sun still seems veiled, its full strength held back by the lingering atmosphere and haze. But real change is finally happening. You notice it first in the growing things. The gardens, so carefully tended in raised beds and sheltered corners, produce more vigorously than anyone dared hope. The beans climb their stakes, putting forth flowers that actually set fruit. The hardy root vegetables swell beneath the soil. Even the grain, planted in the most favourable spots, grows waist-high, its heads forming properly despite the diminished sunlight. The wild plants respond too. Berries ripen in the forest clearings, smaller than in normal years, but sweet nonetheless. Mushrooms appear after rain showers, providing valuable variety to your diet. Game returns to the woods as new growth provides forage deer, still thin but more numerous. Rabbits multiplying again, birds nesting and raising young. Each small improvement builds upon the last. Each day, with a bit more sunshine than the one before, reinforces the growing conviction that the worst is truly behind you. The beans will be ready to harvest next week, your mother announces one morning in early summer, returning from her inspection of the garden. Her face, still leaner than before the darkness, nevertheless glows with quiet satisfaction. And the early turnips are nearly big enough to pull. Such simple statements would have passed unremarked in the time before. Now they feel like pronouncements of victory. Your father, returning from checking his fish traps in the stream, brings equally good news. 6 good-sized trout, he reports, holding up his catch. The water's running clearer now. Fish can see the bait better. These small successes multiply across the village. The communal stores, so dangerously depleted during winter, begin to build back up, not to the levels of true abundance that will take multiple good seasons, but enough to ease the constant anxiety about tomorrow's meal. With this easing comes a gradual return to activities beyond mere survival. The long-neglected church is cleaned and repaired, its services better attended than before the darkness, though with a different quality to the worshipless formal ritual, more genuine gratitude. Craftspeople return to their specialties. The weaver sets up her loom again, using wool carefully saved from the few sheep that survived. The potter, who had set aside his art to focus on hunting during the darkest months, begins making new vessels to replace those broken over the winter. Children, thin but energetic, play games in the village centre again rather than spending all their time in food-gathering chores. Their voices, raised in laughter, seem to chase away the last lingering shadows of the terrible year. One remarkable day in midsummer, a caravan arrives, 3 wagons accompanied by a dozen people on foot. They're traders from the south, the first organised trading expedition to reach your area since the darkness began. The roads are passable again, explains their leader, a weathered woman with shrewd eyes, and there's demand for goods from the Northfors, amber, certain herbs that grow better in your climate. They've brought treasures, salt, always precious but nearly unobtainable during the dark months, iron tools from the southern forges, small luxuries like honey and spices, and most valuable of all, reliable information about conditions elsewhere. The darkness is lifting everywhere, the trader confirms to the gathered villagers, faster in some places than others, but the pattern is clear. The sun returns. What caused it? Someone asks. Does anyone know for certain? The learned men in the great cities have theories, she replies with a shrug. Some say a mountain across the eastern sea erupted, sending ash into the heavens. Others blame a great fire in the forests far to the north. Still others see it as divine punishment for human sins. She adjusts her colourful headscarf, a touch of southern fashion that seems almost shocking after months of practical drabness. What matters is that it's ending. Already in the Mediterranean lands, crops grow almost normally, ships sail regular routes, markets bustle. And those who left here to travel south? The headman asks. Have you heard any news of refugees from these parts? The trader considers. Many northerners have come to the southern kingdoms. Some find places, learn new skills, others struggle. It's not easy being a stranger in need. She looks around at your village, taking in the signs of hard survival and tentative recovery. Those who stayed and kept their homes like you may have chosen wisely, though the path was harder. After setting up their goods for trading, the caravan members share a meal with the village. It's a modest feast by old standards, but remarkable compared to the winter's deprivation: fresh fish, early vegetables, bread made from the first limited grain harvest mixed with ground nuts to extend it. During the meal, stories are exchanged. The traders tell of conditions elsewhere, how different communities fared during the dark time, the changes wrought across the wider world. The villagers share their own tales of survival, innovations, losses, and unexpected discoveries. Our old healer died midwinter, recounts the headman, but she had already begun training this young one. He nods toward you, acknowledging your new role in the community, who found that certain tree fungi make effective medicine for chest ailments, saved 3 children during the late snowstorms. You feel a flush of pride at this public recognition. Your apprenticeship to the new healer, born of necessity when Edith left with the southern emigrants, has become something more a genuine calling discovered in the midst of crisis. Other stories follow the hunter who developed new snare designs that worked even in deep snow, the former Roman soldier's son who remembered his father's technique for making insulated shelters, the grandmother who taught everyone which tree barks could be ground for emergency flour. Necessity is the mother of innovation, nods the lead trader approvingly. That's been true everywhere. The darkness forced us all to remember old ways and discover new ones. The trading continues for 3 days. Few in the village have goods valuable enough to exchange for the caravan's treasures, but barter arrangements are made promises of future pelts, honey from the wild hives that are re-establishing themselves in the forest, medicinal herbs that will be ready for harvest later in the summer. On the morning the traders depart, they leave behind not just the goods that were exchanged, but something equally valuable: connection to the wider world, confirmation that life continues beyond your isolated community, proof that recovery is not just a local phenomenon, but a widespread reality. That same day brings another significant event. A small group of people appears on the path from the East, not traders this time, but familiar faces. 3 families who had left for the south during the winter have returned. They're greeted with surprise and joy, welcomed back into the community they'd departed. That evening, around the communal fire, they share their experiences. "We made it as far as the Great River," explains Godric, once the village's best hunter. "Found a settlement there that took us in, but it wasn't," he hesitates, looking for words. "It wasn't home, and as the weather improved, as we heard reports that conditions were getting better here too, we decided to return." "The journey south was hard," adds his wife. "Many who left didn't make it all the way, and those who did often found that being newcomers, refugees, meant starting at the bottom, working the worst land, taking the meanest jobs. We heard about your bean harvest," says another returnee with a slight smile. "Word travels even in these times. They say the northern villages are recovering, that you found ways to grow food even in the dim light." "We adapted," the headman acknowledges, "as did you, in your own way. We're glad to have you back." Arrangements are made to reintegrate the returning families. Their former homes had been maintained by those who stayed, part of an unspoken agreement that the community would remain open to those who might return. Fields are reallocated, tools shared, the work of the village redistributed to include the additional hands. A week after the return of the emigrants, when they've settled back into the rhythms of the village, an even more significant event occurs. It begins as an ordinary summer morning, cool but pleasant, the weakened sun fighting its way through the ever-present haze. You're in the forest with your younger sister, gathering berries that grow in a sunny clearing, when she suddenly stops, looking upward. "The sky," she says, wonder in her voice. "Look at the sky." You follow her gaze. Above, something is happening. The dull, greyish veil that has hung over the world for so many months is shifting. thinning. In places, it's breaking apart like morning mist, revealing patches of true blue sky. And through one such break, the sun shines down, not the weak copper-coloured disk you've grown accustomed to, but something closer to its former self, golden and bright. The light strikes your face with surprising warmth. You find yourself frozen in place, berry basket forgotten, face lifted to receive this gift. Beside you, your sister is doing the same, her eyes closed, expression rapturous. It doesn't last long. The break in the haze closes. The direct sunlight fades back to filtered dimness. But it happened. You both saw it. Felt it. We have to tell everyone, your sister says, already gathering up her basket, ready to run back to the village. You hurry after her, your own steps quickened by excitement, but as you emerge from the forest edge, you realize you're not the only ones who noticed. Throughout the village, people have stopped their work, faces turned skyward. Some are pointing, exclaiming, others stand in reverent silence. The sun is breaking through again, this time for longer. Golden light spills across the village like honey, illuminating everything with a clarity you'd almost forgotten was possible. Colours seem suddenly more vivid, the green of growing things, the blue of the stream, the varied hues of clothing and homes. Shadows, sharp-edged and definite, appear for the first time in months. It's coming back, someone says, voice thick with emotion. The sun is truly coming back. There's no formal celebration, no organised response to this moment. It unfolds organically, people drawn together in small groups, sharing their observations, their hopes, their relief. Some weep openly, others laugh, a few drop to their knees in prayer. Your family gathers outside your home, standing together in the strengthening sunlight. Your father puts his arm around your mother's shoulders. Your siblings, even the older ones who try to maintain their dignity, can't help but spin and dance in the golden light. "Will it stay this time?" your youngest brother asks, squinting upward. "Not all at once," your father answers. "But yes, I think the worst is over. The light is returning for good." Over the next few weeks, his prediction proves accurate. The breaks in the atmospheric haze become more frequent, last longer. The sun's strength increases noticeably. The growing season, which began so tentatively, accelerates. Crops that had been struggling suddenly flourish. With this visible improvement comes a psychological shift throughout the village. The future, which for so long could not be contemplated beyond the next meal or the next day, expands again. People make plans for the harvest, for repairs to homes that will last years, for children's education beyond immediate survival skills. In this atmosphere of cautious optimism, the headman calls a village council one evening in late summer. The communal hall is full, every family represented. Unlike the grim gatherings of the dark months, the mood is lighter, faces more relaxed, voices more animated. "We've survived something few living people have experienced," the headman begins when everyone has settled. "A year of darkness, a year when the very rhythms of nature were disrupted. Many did not survive. Those of us who did have been changed by the experience." Murmurs of agreement ripple through the gathering. As we move forward into better times, he continues, we need to consider what we've learned, what we want to preserve from this difficult time, even as we gratefully leave much of it behind. This prompts thoughtful silence. No one rushes to speak. Finally, old Afri rises shakily to her feet, supported by a younger woman. "We remembered the old knowledge," she says, her voice frail but clear. "The plants that can sustain us when crops fail, the ways to preserve food without salt, the methods of finding water and keeping warm that our ancestors knew, but we had forgotten. We must not forget again," adds the new healer who replaced Edith. "These skills should be taught to every child, not just those with special interest. Everyone should know how to survive." Others speak up, offering reflections on the dark time and suggestions for the future. The blacksmith who returned from the south proposes regular trading expeditions to maintain connections with distant communities, ending the isolation that made the crisis more dangerous. A young mother suggests establishing larger communal food stores beyond what individual families maintain. "And what of those who died?" asks a man who lost his wife during the worst of the winter. "How do we honor them? Make meaning of their loss?" This question strikes deep. Nearly everyone lost someone: family, friends, neighbors. The grief set aside during the struggle for survival resurfaces now that immediate danger has passed. Father Cuthbert stands, his thin face solemn. In the Christian tradition, we believe suffering has purpose, though we may not always understand it. Those who died during the darkness are martyrs of a kind, victims of a trial that tested all humanity. The old ways would say they're watching us from beyond, counters a voice from the back, one of the elders who maintained the pre-Christian traditions. That they walk beside us still, stronger now than when they wore flesh. Surprisingly, the priest nods respectfully at this. Perhaps these are not so different, these beliefs. What matters is that we remember, that their suffering and sacrifice aren't forgotten. The conversation continues as night falls, ranging over practical matters and philosophical ones, immediate needs and long-term plans. There's disagreement, sometimes heated, but underlying it all is a sense of common purpose that wasn't always present before the darkness came. "We need a memorial," suggests your father during a lull. "Something permanent, something that will remind future generations of what happened here, what was lost and what was learned." This idea finds immediate support. Suggestions are offered: a stone monument, a special grove of trees, an annual observance on the day the darkness began. "What about a book?" you venture, speaking up for the first time. All eyes turn to you, and you feel a flutter of nervousness but continue. The monastery monks record important events. Brother Thomas said they're already writing about the darkness. We could do the same, not just names and dates, but our stories, the things we learned, so even hundreds of years from now people would know. There's a thoughtful silence, then nods of approval. It's an ambitious project for a small village with limited literacy, but with help from Father Cuthbert and occasional guidance from the monastery, it seems possible. "The Book of Darkness," someone suggests as a title. "No," counters your mother gently. "The Book of Survival, of Endurance." The darkness was only half the story. As the meeting concludes, people linger, reluctant to end this moment of community reflection. Small groups form, conversations continue. There's a feeling of something significant having occurred, not just the visible return of the sun, but a deeper realization of what your community has become through adversity. Walking home under a sky where stars are once again clearly visible, your family reflects on the journey of the past year. "We're not the same people we were," your mother observes, looking at each of you in turn. "Not the same family, not the same village. Better or worse?" asks your sister. Your mother considers this carefully. "Different, stronger in some ways, more aware of our fragility in others." She reaches out to touch each child's head in turn. "More grateful, certainly, for things we once took for granted." At home, your father builds up the fire, not the desperate, minimal flame of winter, but a comfortable blaze for warmth and light. Though the day was sunny, summer nights still carry a chill, a reminder that nature's rhythms aren't fully restored. As your family settles around the hearth, your youngest brother asks for a story, a request that would have seemed frivolous during the darkest days when every word, like every action, was focused on survival. "Tell about the time before the darkness," he urges, "when the sun was always bright." "Not always bright," your father corrects gently. "There were cloudy days, rainy days, but yes, it was a different world." He begins the tale, describing ordinary life before the catastrophe. The predictable seasons, the expected harvests, the regular festivals and markets. It sounds almost mythical now, this stable existence where nature's patterns could be relied upon absolutely. "Will it ever be exactly like that again?" your sister asks when he pauses. "I don't know," he answers honestly. "The sun grows stronger each day, but the wise ones say it may take years for the skies to clear completely. And even then, we're changed. We'll always be watching the sky now, noticing any dimming, remembering." "That's not entirely bad," your mother points out. "We're more prepared now, more aware, more adaptable." The conversation drifts to plans for the coming harvest, which promises to be, if not abundant by old standards, at least sufficient to restore depleted stores. There's talk of the returning traders who promise to visit again before winter, bringing news and goods from distant places. Someone mentions the proposed memorial book, wondering who might contribute stories, who might be tasked with the actual writing. Ordinary talk, future-oriented talk, the kind of conversation impossible to imagine during the worst of the darkness. Later, as the household settles for sleep, you step outside for a moment. The night is clear, stars scattered across the sky in familiar patterns. The moon, nearly full, casts solid shadows, something that would have seemed miraculous just months ago. The air feels different too fresher, carrying the sense of growing things rather than the metallic tang of ash that lingered for so long. Somewhere in the distance, a nightbird calls, life continuing, adapting, persisting. Inside your home, your family sleeps no longer huddled together for warmth out of desperate necessity, but still closer than before the darkness came. The experience has left its mark in countless ways, visible and invisible. Relationships altered, priorities shifted, knowledge gained at terrible cost but precious nonetheless. In your own sleeping space, more comfortable than the hard pallet of winter but still simple, you find your thoughts turning to the future in a way that was impossible during the darkest days. Your new role as a healer's apprentice, the book of memories that might be created, the trading connections being re-established, the sun growing stronger day by day. The darkness changed everything. The village, the wider world, you yourself. There will be no returning to exactly what was before, but as sleep claims you, your last waking thought is that perhaps what emerges from this crucible might, in some important ways, be better than what came before. More appreciative of sunlight and growing things, more conscious of connection and interdependence, more aware of both human fragility and human resilience. Outside, the stars continue their ancient patterns, wheeling slowly above your sleeping village. The crops, nourished by the strengthening sun, grow silently in the night, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the next dawn waits brighter than the one before, promising a day with more light than shadow. You drift into peaceful sleep, warm and secure in your bedworlds, away from that terrible year of darkness, yet forever changed by it, carrying its lessons forward into whatever comes next. And as you sleep, let the cares of the day melt away. Your journey through this ancient disaster is complete, but the comfort of your own bed remains. Let your breathing slow, matching the gentle rhythm of rest that humans have known since time began. The darkness of night isn't something to fear, but a natural pause, a restful interlude before the light returns again. Sleep well, knowing that whatever challenges we face, we too can endure, adapt, and find our way back to the light.